Hello.
Hello. I suspect that only the two of us are showing up today, Thomas. And as we did the triaging yesterday, I think it's totally fine to skip this unless there's anything you want to talk about.
Nope, nothing really happened since yesterday.
Okay, then let's just wait 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
And if nobody comes, because I also don't have anything to talk about, we came up for the recording, because this recording will go to YouTube. Yesterday, Thomas and I discussed the next steps with GraphiQL. TLDR, we want to do the modernization of components at the same time implementing the new design. The new design will end up as a breaking change. GraphiQL 2 will come out of that. And Monaco will come later. There are some questions, open questions for Monaco, technical challenges we need to find solutions for example, how to deal with a web worker. Because depending on your build setup, you might have to add like a Vite, Webpack, config, plugin, whatever. And that is something we need to figure out because that might be like a big breaking change as CodeMirror doesn't have that worker. There's the option to not have a worker, but it's advised against by the VS Code team. Yeah. Anything else, Thomas?
No, that sums it up pretty good. I think all the updates will be posted in GitHub in the Road to version 2 issue. So, yeah.
Okay.
Nothing more to add.
Okay. Then let's wait a few more minutes and then give ourselves. Oh, someone is coming. Oh, cool. Hello.
Hello.
Hi there. Hey, Tim.
Hi.
Hey, Thomas. How you guys doing?
Jonathan. Doing well. We have just been saying if nobody shows up, we close the meeting because we didn't have anything to talk about. But
I was excited to show up. I popped in to the GraphQL, the discussion about 2.0.
Yeah.
I'm a designer developer, and so I was super into the Figma file that was created. So I started like just kind of poking around with it. And I asked that question on the issue about the font face that was being used. It was circular was being used, or Commons was being used. Anyway, started going down this rabbit hole with the Figma file and started like building out a component library that I thought would be helpful.
Oh.
And then I ended up, I've like just done a ton of work and I'd like to show it to everybody quickly to see if it's valuable. It's a ladle library. I've got Monaco working with the Explorer, and I've just spent like the last 2 weeks kind of going nuts with it. I had a head cold, so I was at home all the time.
Oh.
So when we're ready, I'd love to show it off and ask some questions about the project and how I can get involved and all that stuff.
Whoa, that's awesome. Okay, didn't expect that. That's super awesome. I will quickly create the collaborative document, prepare that so that we can take collaborative notes here. Good old Google Docs, and then we can also get started. Perfect. That's really great to hear. Can also do quick intros in the meantime. Jonathan, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I just stepped away real quick.
All good. Yeah, so I'm Tim, co-founder of GraphCDN, and we have Thomas. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, Thomas. I work at GraphCDN as a software engineer, and yeah, also as part of that, spending some time and effort on helping GraphiQL to get some progress.
Great.
That's why I'm here.
My name's John. I live in Austin, Texas. and I've been a product engineer for I don't know, 7 or 8 years now. Primarily with greenfield startup projects. I've done a lot of agency work, both working for agencies and consulting for agencies. And I left my startup job last October because I was just burned out, just full on 2 years of COVID, just totally burned out. And I took about 6 months off, just not being in front of the computer, which was great. And I came back about a couple months ago, and I started working. I'm a big fan of Prisma, and I know that has certain connotations in the world these days.
I have heard of them.
I happen to love it. I think it's great. So I used Playground for a long time, and I've recently switched over to GraphQL Yoga. I'm a big fan of the GraphQL ecosystem, and so I use GraphiQL all the time. I use it a lot, and then now that I'm like getting back in. I don't have a full-time job yet. I'm just getting back into like getting the fingers fresh and doing that. I noticed that y'all were rebuilding it, and that it seems really cool. And I'm great with component libraries and design systems and all that. So I thought I might be able to help. So I just started pitching in, like I said.
That's fantastic. Wow. We are in Austin, by the way. Are you going to the GraphQL Conf organized by the foundation? Have you heard of it?
Is it in Austin?
It is in Austin, yeah. Typical, nobody heard about it. Yeah, it is in Austin, and we are even giving talks. I will even talk about GraphiQL, so I think you should come.
I'm looking at it now. When is it?
It is 7th of June. It's co-hosted with the OpenJS World Conference.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely do that.
For whatever reason, where is it even? I can't find.
It's really hard to find.
Because the blog, they didn't even blog about it. No tweet.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Wait,
yeah,
I have it. I can show it here.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so we're coming with the whole team. We have to meet. I mean, that would be great.
That's awesome. It's going to be hot.
We have heard. It's
going to be. You can see I'm sweating already, and I'm inside. It's 95, 96 Fahrenheit today. So.
Whoa.
It's going to get. It's in a month. What is that? Wait, you said June, right?
Yeah.
So a couple of weeks, a month. Yeah, it's going to be hot. It's going to be hot. But you guys will have a great time. Austin's a wonderful city.
Yes, that will be great. So I will quickly share the document with you for the notes. Then we can get started. The link is an editor. I will send the document in Zoom. Okay. I will just say 20 minutes and it can be more. Okay. Good. Okay, maybe Jonathan, before diving into that, Thomas and I can give you a quick update of the next steps, what we have talked about, because we did the triaging meeting yesterday and we talked about next steps, so a bit like context already, and then would love to hear, yeah, what you have been working on. Okay, so I will just share my screen, I think. Quickly show that stuff. So what we have been talking about yesterday, I guess you have seen the path to graphical v2 issue.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what we basically realized is that both the design and Monaco is a breaking change. Why? There are people who are extending the design and they have their own like plugins and so on. For them, it will be breaking. But also the component structure will change. And again, if you are a bit more advanced user who's not just using the CDN version of GraphiQL, it is a breaking change. What we also discussed is that modernizing the components and the new design can be done in parallel. The order doesn't really matter. And that is a perfect thing to coordinate with where the two of you can coordinate, for example. So from Graph CDN side, Thomas is the main contributor now for GraphiQL. I'm more in like a coordinator role now. And so after that, we would like to tackle Monaco. Monaco has some challenges to it, mostly around the web workers. It's highly recommended by the VS Code team to use web workers. Could also not use them, but that would potentially block the whole UI thread. And including them can be a bit tricky depending on your setup. You might need a Vite or Webpack plugin. But there's also an option to have a CDN build for that. So that's something to explore and find good options, but that is breaking also from the perspective of key bindings, as Monaco is already bringing a lot of goodies with it. It just makes sense to adopt them, but with that, we will also have then a few breaking changes on that front. And then last but not least, the new sidebar. We just put that as the last action here because it is very ambitious. It has a lot of things we need to figure out. We will need to stay in a feedback loop with Julian, our designer, because edge cases might not yet be fully spec'd. So that's a rough plan, just breaking things down a bit more into smaller components instead of the big bang. Everything is new. So yeah, that's basically it. Thomas, from your side, what are the next, do you already know what the next concrete things are that you will work on?
Not really, not very concretely. It's basically I'm gonna continue trying to modernize the components, and also we want to create a new package at GraphiQL React, which should basically contain the building blocks for the graphical UI, so both the UI components and everything you need for state management, so like hooks and context that glue all the things together. And the graphical package will basically be like a reference implementation of GraphiQL, of how you can build a GraphiQL. But folks can then also use the GraphiQL React package to build their own version if they want to. Basically, reusing the building blocks that we already provide, and I don't know, just like rearranging them, adding stuff to it, whatever fits their needs. So yeah, basically next things, continuing modernizing the current React code from the graphical package and moving stuff gradually over in this new package.
Yep. Any questions, Jonathan?
I have a few questions that they probably fit better if I work them into when I'm showing you guys some code and the component library as it stands.
Sure.
Yeah.
Then handing it over to you, Jonathan.
Great. Let me. So I'm sharing on my big monitor. Let me get in here so you guys can see it a little bit better. Okay, so I started with just looking at the Figma file and trying to piece it together, trying to piece together what I knew was it's all great, but like what was going to work in terms of a component library and what wasn't going to work. And so what I came across in the Figma file was a couple of things. This can get kind of rambling. Okay, so I've spent the last 2 weeks just like full on in this. So
whoa.
The first thing is that after I learned Monaco and learned, I took apart the One Graph Explorer and another person, StoneX, I believe is his GitHub name, had like, done a bunch of work on the Explorer. I just started taking all that apart. And in the end, I realized that because Monaco only takes hex colors, if you want to customize Monaco, we need hex at some point, like to feed in if we're going to have this thing be themable. And in the design file, all of the, not all, but a lot of the colors, let's see, I've got it divided up here. Let's see, I think it's this one. So these colors are the colors that are used throughout the actual designs, both in the components file and in like the screens, the final screens. And there's alpha values, and they're just, it's not, the color structure isn't tight enough. So that's one thing. It's going to take, I mean, if we're actually going to use the Figma file, like for real, use it like ongoing and keep it up to date and make sure that we're starting here when we want to make changes, that's going to have to, we're just going to have to change. Those colors are going to need to get flattened into hex colors. If we don't want to do that, we can have some utility, right, in the component
I can
library.
directly give you a quick perspective on that. That's Julian's style, how to use the colors. It's much easier in Figma to do the opacity-based levels, but we always notice when we implement them on our own, you need the absolute colors, right?
Yeah.
And converting them into the hex from the RGB or RGBA is absolutely legit. No, like totally fine. I even have write access. I can even give you write access to the Figma file, and then you can just convert them. Yeah, absolutely, like green light, 1000%.
I'd be happy to. It's a lot of work though, to go through and do it, which is fine. I'm happy to do it. I think there's a lot of value in it. Again, I think the decision really has to be made as to whether or not we're going to use the Figma file as this source of truth for design. I think that we should. I think it's a great idea. There's no reason not to. But I'm sure you guys know, it just means it's a lot more work, right? When you start a change, you have to start in the Figma file, and it has to flow into the component library. So that's just kind of a thing. I'm happy to do it. I'd love to do it, but it just means that like we're committing to keeping the Figma file up to date. It also means that, Thomas, like you mentioned earlier, when you said like when you and Julian were going through and working on everything, there's quite a bit. This is all messy. This is my copy, so I've kind of been mutzing around with it. But there's a lot of stuff that's missing in here, just in terms, like if we're actually going to be building components out of this example, it's like, how does the arguments drop down work? What, not just the interactivity, but what does the expanded menu look like? It doesn't exist here. So there's a lot of work to get done in here, and again, I'm happy to take over some of the work that Julian did. It's gorgeous. I love it. It's beautiful, but there's just a lot of maintenance work and upkeep with the Figma file. So that's colors, right?
Yeah, that's why we need him part of the process. Absolutely happy to schedule calls there and literally go through these things and give Julian a brief what we are missing. Oh, there's one more thing I want to quickly drop in here. So we said, because it's too extreme to go for the new sidebar immediately. I mean, let's say it this way, if you are actually working on it full time, we might be able to change our plan here, but otherwise we would even let Julian design an intermediate sidebar or Doc Explorer that is basically the old one, the old functionality, just with a new look, so that we can already get something out. That was a plan. He didn't start with it yet, but that would be a plan, because we wouldn't have the speed to basically ship all of it like in reasonable amount of time. If you have more time on it, we could also adjust our plan.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important if if the Explorer is really going to be like we're going to go with this plugin based system, right? And we're going to build it like that. I think we really have to try to get it as complete as possible, and not do like an intermediate step and then a rebuild. I'm struggling to like see in the future if that might be a breaking change, if that swaps. I'm not sure, but I think there's not that much missing from the Figma file in terms of like actual component structures. There's some, but it's the bulk of the work is already done. But I think the challenge really is more I as a developer and a designer, I go through this iterative process a whole lot. I never advocate for building a full design and then or designing something fully and then trying to build it, because you're always going to have to go back and forth. You always have to move back and forth. So with the work that has been done by a bunch of different people on starting to build out the new Doc Explorer, we've already got a list. I've already got basically a list. I don't have it written down, but a list of like what's missing. So I don't know that, I think it's probably fine to
directly go for it.
Yeah, I think it like I said, it's almost all there. Let me just show you guys what I have here.
Okay.
This is Ladle. Ladle's a Storybook alternative. If you've used Storybook before, I have used it a lot. This is my first time using Ladle. I use Storybook a lot. It's so slow. I'm so glad something else came along.
Is this the Vite-based one? Okay.
It's been fun to learn. It's been challenging. Here's the config file for Ladle. Here's that Vite plugin from Monaco that you mentioned earlier, right? I had to figure that out. This isn't clean. Like it's not clean, but there's a lot here. So there's some basic. Let me actually go back to the code. So here's the components folder. I have these components all kind of broken down. There's a base UI that's just fundamental UI components that take basic props. There's some shell components. I haven't used a whole lot of this yet. There's a reference folder that contains like any like actual like organism style components that I'm using. In this case, there's only one, and it's the demo for the app. There's a layouts. This is all just like layout components. There's only one right now. There's an Explorer folder that has, this is basically like the new Docs Explorer. This is all that stuff. You'll probably recognize like the names of some of these because I'm just building off of work that other people have done. And then there's an editor folder that's got an editor group, which is like the query, the variables, and the response, and then a tab setup. I haven't worked on this tabs yet, but that's basically what this looks like. So if we go over to Ladle, here's an editor. So there's a story for the query editor. I haven't done much work on customizing the view for these editors. I figured it out last night. It finally hit me like how to do it. I just haven't integrated it here. Query editor, a results viewer, and a variables editor. And then there's an editor group, which is all three of them together, right? Does the thing. And then it also includes the tabs and then any of the sub content, right? The headers, the network response, whatever else is going to be done there. There's a lot of design work to do there, I think. And then the big one is just the demo, right? So here's Explorer working.
Nice.
Right. Works. It's all tied in with Monaco.
Whoa.
So there's a lot here. Arguments are not done yet. I have the the descriptions in. This caused a lot of issues, like on the thread on GitHub with like how we do these descriptions and can you really fit them in line. I prefer the design. Tim, you and Julian released a video on Grain, right, where you took us through a tour of the design that you had been working on. And in the video, the Figma file has the descriptions below the field name and the type, which I think was really good. That's not in the current Figma file. So this is going to be, it'll probably be an issue with how to pull that off.
There were two options there. One was inline, but cut off, but on the other was below and full. We weren't sure which one makes most sense. Happy to talk about it and also experiment. I think we just need a few test schemas and look how it looks.
I think that's exactly right. That's one of the reasons I really wanted to jump in and just start getting stuff on the screen here so we can start playing with it and using it. And I'm a massive fan of prototyping. Like I said, iterative, right? In between design and develop constantly. That's how I work. More than likely, I would just build in two versions, right? You can flip a flag on that component that either puts it in line or drops it below, something like that, and we can play with that. So let me show you a little bit of just the state management because I think it's going to be controversial. And like I said, I built this not necessarily for the final product. I love it if some of this gets included, but I also just wanted to get going like as fast as I can. And so for that reason, I use the stand as the state manager. Have you guys used the stand before?
Okay. No, but it's funny because it's a German word that means Zustand. But for sure, yeah.
I believe, if I'm correct, it's a Japanese word that means state.
Yeah, but also a German word. Yeah, Zustand. Yeah.
So that's what I'm using for the state manager here. I know it's a dependency. It's probably not going to be popular, but I wanted to just get something going as fast as possible. So there's a single hook that's called use GraphiQL. With the stand, you create a hook. You create a store that's automatically a hook. You can use it anywhere. So this isn't like a typical React hook. The hookness is all coming out of the stand. So here's the shape. It's got a schema. It's got a function to initialize the schema. It holds the query, a function to set the query. It holds the variables, a function to set it, the operation, the results, and then execute operation and operation action. This is all tied together to the way that the Explorer works with the editor group. A lot of this work comes directly from StoneX and the library that he put together. I took a lot of code from what they did and used it. And so basically, let's see, let me show you the story for that app container so you can just sort of see how it all comes together. I don't remember if I have resizing working again. I think I do. Yeah. So the app is in a horizontally resizable container. It's got a left pane and a right pane. You can see that we're just grabbing everything out of the state hook and feeding it in to the editor group component. The Explorer is also doing something similar, where we're just grabbing the schema from the hook. The schema is initialized. Currently, it's initialized at the ladle level. So there's a provider that just wraps the whole thing, and that's where I'm initializing the schema. So like I don't have this hooked into You can only play with this in Ladle, right? It's not really set up to be like that much of a demonstration. It's just meant to get stuff on the screen and get us playing with it. That's the basic setup. Like that's the challenging stuff. Additionally, I'm using Stitches as the CSS library just because I know it pretty well. And it's another one of those choices I made just to like get something going in the system. So there's the Stitches thing. Let me look at let's go over the package JSON here just so we can see it. Colors from Radix, Stitches from Radix. I don't think I'm actually using Immer anywhere. It's just in there from like when I was playing with it. Monaco GraphQL, React, and Stand. I've got my own ESLint configuration that I'm using in here. But like, there's nothing crazy. Like the only stuff that's crazy is Stitches and Stand. And while that's not necessarily like easily swappable, it's certainly not a crazy thing to like get those swapped out at some point for whatever the final CSS and state management solution is going to be. So that's the basics.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So next up for me in this world, and I'd love to hear opinions and how you all think we should go forth here. Next up for me is just working on the UI for the editors, just customizing it more to fit the design as it stands right now, just so when people light this thing up, it looks like the design and not like it looks right now. So the editor stuff, that will only take another couple of hours. And then I need to figure out the logic for the arguments. Like I said, a lot of the code that I used in the Explorer, where's that component? Handle operation. So this is the button that triggers the change in the fields in the Explorer. A lot of this code was taken from and modified based on what StoneX did and also what OneGraph did. I'm sort of in the middle of translating a lot of what goes on in OneGraph in terms of the arguments. That's what's left. So just the arguments is really all that's left. And then, like you said earlier, all the edge cases, of which there will be plenty. But once that's done, I think this is like pretty much going to be in a place where people can start playing with it. You know, there's a lot of base components that still need to get built, like buttons and just kind of like really simple stuff that I skipped over because I realized I had a lot of learning to do with Monaco and with just the craziness of handling selection sets and field selections and all that GraphQL stuff. So that's where it's at.
Okay. That's interesting because this is obviously new data. The fact that you did this, and we should now talk about if we want to change our plan here. Thomas, what do you think?
I don't have the feeling that we should change our plan right now. I think this is great work, especially on the UI side, looking at the Docs Explorer and what's already there. And I believe from the UI side, we could probably take a lot of these things that we already did, Jonathan, over. As you said, I think we still need to figure out how we want to do state management. So currently it's basically React state. I personally leave it at that as long as we don't really need some more advanced state management, like if we hit any kind of limit in terms of performance or complexity. Just like to keep it more simple. I think what we also didn't decide yet is basically, or really decide is how we want to do or handle CSS and theming. So that's something that we will we need to decide still.
Yeah, so I mean, around that, we just said we keep the current CSS and introduce CSS variables for people, right, to be able to theme it. That was the last thing we said.
That's yeah.
And in my understanding, please, Jonathan.
I was just going to say, in that situation, all we do is ask. We just have a typed theme option for colors and anything else that can get changed, right? And we're passing those directly into the variables. That's what we're talking about doing.
Yeah, like directly as CSS variables. That would also mean it doesn't really matter what we internally use, right, to do the CSS, because the interface that people would use to do theming is CSS variables anyway, right?
Just an object, yeah. Well, yeah, it would just be an object, right?
So, Thomas, how would you see that? How could we find a way to kind of incorporate Jonathan's work here into the plan, or would you keep that separate and then integrate it later, or how would you see that?
I'd probably say integrate it then later. So basically, I'd like to stay with the incremental approach that we decided on, to just move step by step towards the goal that we have in front of us. But like both things that you worked on, Jonathan, are basically the two big new things, namely Monaco and the Docs Explorer. So this is something that we don't have anyways yet in the current GraphiQL. Or like we have like examples around Monaco, but nothing that really looks like the final thing.
Yeah, I think on that note, I think the work that I've done, this repository, there's a shadow value to it that we haven't talked about, and that's, as I've learned over the last 2 weeks, some of this stuff is really complicated. Some of it's really complicated. I was surprised at how complicated some of it was, and the Monaco stuff and the Explorer stuff, it's really hard to look at existing code that's written for that, like in separate things, right? You can look at one Graphic Explorer and they've got a file, it's like 2,700 lines of code, right? It's really hard to sort of grok what's going on and get a good understanding of it. As an example, and there really doesn't seem to another example doesn't really seem to exist of that kind of work. So that's really hard. Additionally, the Monaco stuff, I'm not sure what's going on at Microsoft, but it's really hard to just find like basic tutorials for how to use it. Not Monaco GraphQL. I just mean Monaco in general.
I know. Yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds of open issues, and it's kind of crazy. So my point here is that the shadow value of this repository that I've worked on is that it's going to give anybody, I think it's going to give anybody who wants to get involved here a leg up in just learning some of the basics, right? Because you can put this in front of somebody and they can begin to understand the complicated parts a lot easier than if they were just out on their own working on it. And I know that I'm not the only one. I might be the only one that went this nuts, but I'm not the only one that wants to get involved with this project. There seems to be a lot of interest and having a tool that people can just play with and use, and everybody can use as a prototype, I think is incredibly valuable. My goal is not to like get this integrated into the React package, because I know that I've made decisions that are not, they're not good for the final product.
Okay, but
first of all, still it looks already. I mean, if the markup and like the styling looks very similar, I mean, it's like we can basically take a lot of this over. Like maybe not just not copy the file one-to-one into the GraphiQL repository, but still the work that we've done probably is gonna save us already like a lot of time when it comes to the sidebar and to the Docs Explorer.
Yep.
Which is awesome.
So then moving forward, Jonathan, first of all, I want to offer here. So how I see that is that we can kind of have two-track development, Meaning we have the official track that Thomas is working on, which is like the modernization, implementing the new design, not yet for the Doc Explorer, but like for around the editor and so on. And then you can already de-risk basically the sidebar. And I'm happy to connect you with Julian and also with Thomas. We can schedule a call. I don't think that needs to be a long call. And if you could just prepare all the questions you have, and to be fair, we might not even need a call. We can just have a channel together where you can just prepare them. Hey, it's unclear about arguments. These points are unclear. Unblocking you, because what you're doing, you're de-risking the sidebar. And with that, we can already get all of these tricky interactions. We can kind of quickly iterate on them, prototype them, find out if they work. Yep. And from there, once we're in our plan at the point where we want to go for the sidebar, which depending on how quickly we get the rubber on the road here could be already in a few weeks, then we could just start integrating that work. So from your interest of commitment here, Jonathan, would you also be interested in working on the kind of slow path of like taking the existing, oh, Doc Jones is coming. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Jonathan, would you be interested in also working with Thomas on like this quote unquote slow path, or would you like to rather focus more on your prototype for now? What is your interest there?
I've had a really good time working on this the last couple of weeks, and I plan to continue working on it. So I'm happy to slot in wherever is necessary. I don't know that I can make a decision right now about what's best. I think I love to put this code in front of people, and I'd love to do some work in Figma to sort of reset the baseline before just deciding. I don't want to commit to anything right now because I have a feeling like in a week it would just change. You know, like things are going to be different. Basically, I'm ready for both, and I'm just excited to to be a contributor.
Okay, but generally I would say it seems like where you can have the most impact right now would be where you already have the most context, which is in the project, because you built up a lot of context over the last 2 weeks. And I think it would be great if you just continue exploring that. And then we can later work together on integrating that into the main repository. Yeah, but I like that approach that you did it separately, because in the main repository you might move a bit slower sometimes with all the stuff that's already going on. Yeah,
I don't have context for I've done a lot of reading both in the Discord and through the GitHub repository for GraphiQL, but it seems like there's been start and stops to this 2.0 thing for the last couple of years, and so it's really hard for me to get a baseline, to get an understanding, which is why I just started kind of working on my own before I got to meet everybody and participate. I did message Ricky on Discord a couple of weeks ago, just saying like, hey, I'm working on a component library and I want to help contribute. So I haven't actually talked to him. It's been about a week since we messaged, but I haven't delivered anything. So at the very least, there'll be shell layout and base UI components that can effectively be like one-to-one moved over, right? The base components. And then there's a lot of logical stuff that I think we'll be able to get worked out in my component library as well. So I agree that that's probably the strongest place for me to be, is just to keep plugging away in a prototype.
Makes total sense. We have another person who is not here today who wants to help as well, Moritz, who will talk with Thomas. And I think generally it's not the lack of willingness from the community, it's really getting the project into the state that people can contribute first. And that is what, even for Thomas and me, who are looking into this for weeks and months, it's not always trivial. What we do every Monday now, can join, but you don't have to, is a triaging meeting 1 hour of just going through old issues. For example, we had to make the hard call to close a PR for Duckbeam, which doesn't make sense anymore to ship now because we will work on the new design soon. Great, but then I would say that's a good state. Where can I best reach you, Jonathan? Are you in Discord?
I am, yeah.
What's your name?
I'll ping it right now.
You're not Secrets Jason, right?
No, that's not me. I saw that.
And welcome, Doc Jones.
Hi.
Okay. So what I suggest is that if you could just prepare a list of questions you have, Jonathan, and open questions for the design, and I would just open a chat with Julian, or even better is probably we just go into the graphical contributors channel, a graphical development, and add Julian in there, and you can just ask the questions there, and I will make sure that Julian answers. And if it's something we cannot make clear in written form, then we can also jump on a quick call. We want to unblock you so you can already validate these concepts. And in the meantime, we will just work with Thomas to move the base forward, basically. So we kind of arrive at some point at where you are at already with the new sidebar and can integrate the work.
I'll take that to do of a list of Figma questions or concerns or comments. Give me 24 hours because I haven't been in the Figma file really for about a week and a half. So I'm going to go back in there and just try to build my list by looking at it. So give me till tomorrow to do that.
Okay, perfect. Thomas, I guess we meant in the comments not the Prisma file, but the Figma file. The notes.
I think you wrote that down. Yeah, it was
Okay.
a Figma file. Okay,
then it was me. My brain. I'm in San Francisco right now and still a bit jet lagged. Okay, great. So super awesome, Jonathan, to see this work happening here. Really great. In a month, pretty much on the day is the GraphiQL Conf where I will present things, but I'm also thinking you should actually be on the stage because you're doing the work. We can coordinate things, maybe even doing the talk together or something. And with you, I mean Thomas and Jonathan. Great. So then, if there's nothing else, we can just leave it at that and give everybody some time back. Awesome. So then, thanks a lot. So as we said, the next steps for Thomas are like we have like this PR currently for the new React component library, and just moving these things forward. And let's just use the graphical development channel as the main channel, if possible, for communication, so everyone sees that we are working on it. Open communication. Okay, great. Thanks everyone, and then see you in a month or next Monday, 6 p.m. Central European, 9 a.m. Pacific time.
Is that triage meeting in the working group folder?
No.
We don't really take notes for that.
Okay.
Yet.
But it's in the path to graphical v2 issue. I can quickly send that.
Oh no, I've got it right here. If it's there, I can send it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a calendar invite. You can join, and if it doesn't work, you can just ping me. Yeah. Great. Thanks everyone, and then see you soon.
Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.